In the rolling hills of Warwickshire, where ancient hedgerows whisper secrets older than memory, a murder occurred that would confound investigators for decades. The victim bore wounds that defied explanation, found in circumstances so peculiar that even seasoned detectives questioned what they had witnessed. This case would challenge everything authorities thought they knew about crime, superstition, and the thin veil between the mundane and the inexplicable. Before we start, hit subscribe to stay connected with mysterious discoveries. It was February 14, 1945, just as the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the Cotswolds. The village of Lower Quinton in Warwickshire seemed untouched by the war that had ravaged much of England. Ancient stone cottages lined narrow lanes where generations had lived and died, their lives governed by rhythms older than written history. Charles Walton, a 74-year-old farm laborer, had worked these fields for most of his life. The man possessed an intimate knowledge of every hedgerow, every ancient oak, every hidden pathway that crisscrossed the countryside. Local residents knew him as a solitary figure who kept to himself, tending his small garden and taking odd jobs on nearby farms. That morning, Walton had arranged to trim hedges on Meon Hill for his employer, Alfred Potter. The hill rose from the surrounding farmland like a sleeping giant, its slopes covered in dense woodland and ancient earthworks. Archaeological surveys had identified the site as significant, with evidence of human habitation stretching back thousands of years. When Walton failed to return home by evening, his niece Eddie contacted Potter. The farmer gathered several men from the village, and they set out with lanterns to search the hillside. What they discovered beneath a willow tree would haunt them for the rest of their lives. Charles Walton lay pinned to the earth by his own pitchfork, the metal tines driven through his neck and deep into the ground below. His face had been slashed with a billhook in a pattern that formed a crude cross. The wounds were precise, deliberate, executed with someone who understood exactly what they were doing. Detective Inspector Robert Fabian arrived from Scotland Yard the following morning. The veteran investigator had solved numerous complex cases, but nothing had prepared him for the scene on Meon Hill. The positioning of the body suggested ritualistic elements that seemed to belong to another century entirely. The pitchfork had been driven through Walton's throat with such force that it required considerable effort to remove from the frozen ground. The billhook wounds on his face appeared to have been inflicted post-mortem, carved with methodical precision. Both tools belonged to Walton himself, weapons turned against their owner in a grotesque reversal. During the investigation, several witnesses mentioned seeing a large black dog on Meon Hill in the days preceding the murder. The animal stood approximately 3 feet at the shoulder, with a muscular build and eyes that seemed to reflect light even in daylight. Its movement was described as unnaturally fluid, gliding rather than running across the rough terrain. The creature's behavior defied normal canine patterns. It showed no fear of humans but made no aggressive moves, simply watching from a distance before vanishing into the woodland. Local residents who encountered it reported feeling an overwhelming sense of dread, as if the animal carried some invisible burden of malevolence. The investigation revealed disturbing patterns in the village's recent history. 3 other elderly residents had died under unusual circumstances in the months preceding Walton's murder. Each death had been attributed to natural causes, but the timing created an unsettling sequence that defied statistical probability. More troubling were the discoveries made in Walton's cottage. Hidden beneath loose floorboards, investigators found a collection of dried herbs, animal bones, and handwritten notes in a dialect so archaic that linguistic experts struggled to translate them. The papers appeared to contain instructions for various rituals, some involving the phases of the moon and the alignment of stars. The cottage's garden yielded additional mysteries. Certain plants grew in patterns that suggested deliberate cultivation, species that typically thrived in different climates and soil conditions. A botanist from Oxford University examined the specimens and declared several varieties extinct in England for over 2 centuries. Neighbors reluctantly admitted that Walton had possessed an unusual reputation in the village. Children were warned to avoid him, not from fear of violence, but from whispered concerns about his alleged abilities. Some claimed he could predict weather changes with uncanny accuracy, while others insisted he communicated with animals in ways that seemed beyond normal understanding. The most disturbing evidence emerged from the examination of Meon Hill itself. Archaeological surveys conducted after the murder revealed structures beneath the surface that predated known settlements in the region. Ground-penetrating radar detected what appeared to be a network of chambers and passages arranged in configurations that served no apparent practical purpose. Within these underground spaces, investigators found carved symbols that matched elements from Walton's hidden papers. The markings appeared to be far older than the manuscripts, suggesting a tradition that had been preserved across generations. Carbon dating of organic materials found in the chambers indicated continuous use, spanning several centuries. The murder weapon analysis provided the most baffling revelation. Forensic examination of the pitchfork revealed microscopic traces of substances that should not have existed on farming equipment. Residue analysis detected compounds associated with medieval metalworking techniques, materials that had been unavailable for hundreds of years. Laboratory tests on the billhook yielded similar anomalies. The metal showed signs of tempering methods that predated industrial manufacturing, as if the tool had been crafted using techniques from a bygone era. Most unsettling was the discovery of organic material embedded in the blade's surface, tissue samples that defied identification despite extensive analysis. The investigation was officially closed after several months, with no arrests made and no charges filed. Detective Inspector Fabian's final report contained numerous redacted sections, and key evidence was transferred to classified storage. The case files remained sealed, their contents deemed too sensitive for public release. Local residents noticed changes in the years following the murder. Crops in fields surrounding Meon Hill began exhibiting unusual growth patterns, and several farmers reported livestock behaving strangely when pastured near the site. The large black dog was sighted periodically, always at dusk, always watching from the same location where Walton's body had been discovered. The cottage where Charles Walton had lived remained empty for decades, despite numerous attempts to rent or sell the property. Prospective tenants reported feeling overwhelmed by an oppressive atmosphere that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. Those who stayed overnight described dreams filled with images of ancient rituals and whispered voices speaking in languages they could not understand. Recent investigations using modern technology have detected electromagnetic anomalies centered on Meon Hill. The readings suggest the presence of structures or materials that interact with scientific instruments in ways that current theories cannot explain. Government agencies have restricted access to certain areas, citing safety concerns that remain unspecified. The murder of Charles Walton represents more than an unsolved crime. It stands as evidence that some mysteries resist rational explanation. In the shadows of ancient hills, where old knowledge persists despite centuries of progress, the boundaries between documented fact and impossible truth become dangerously thin. What force could have driven someone to commit such a ritualistic murder in the heart of the English countryside? The evidence suggests connections to practices that should have died out centuries ago, yet somehow persisted in the shadows of modern society. Subscribe to explore more cases where the line between investigation and the impossible becomes terrifyingly blurred.